Melly has been in prison for nearly 6 years and is still dealing with a persistent double murder case, so he is going through a tough moment. Now, as his bail hearing heats up, a video of him talking about his alter identity has come to light. Melvin is getting more and more recognition.
Night hits, he really come, and it's like, Melvin is just like, once you play with Melly to a certain extent, Melvin just don't like that. Melvin on your ass.
Despite the fact that it would appear to be typical Melly banter, supporters are positive that he disclosed more information in that clip than he had planned. It's part of a much larger moment that is being analysed frame by frame right now, and some believe it has the potential to drastically change how this case is seen. Let's take a look at the documentary that could change the future. Without talking about how YNW people first noticed Melly's odd behaviour on the 3rd day of the week after he began acting in this way, this trial would not be discussed. He murmured to himself before opening his hands and blowing kisses to the gallery patrons after being seen sitting with his hands folded and his eyes closed in prayer. "You did it a couple of times. That wasn't his first time," said Juvie's mother, Leandra Phillips, in an interview with NBC Miami. "So I walked out because I don't know what you're praying for. You sitting there like you ain't got no remorse. Like every time I walk in, you're smiling. This isn't the first time." The video footage also showed the rapper making eye contact with someone in the seated gallery and repeatedly repeating the same words while becoming very agitated. As was to be expected, people's reactions to all of this vary on the internet, with some people thinking that he showed no concern for the fact that he faces the death penalty. Time for that is sad. This case is serious, and on top of all of that, Melly has been seen laughing and joking around with his lawyer on multiple occasions in a strange incident. The rapper was seen wiping away his tears on the first day of the trial when video of his friends was shown in court, which makes it even stranger. Regardless of the truth, Melly must also be aware that the testimony of the medical examiners and Sergeant Williams supports the initial police report that Melly had shot both men. The prospect of the death penalty is stressful enough, but that Governor Ron DeSantis' non-unanimous death sentence verdict states that if YNW is found guilty, only 8 of the 12 jurors must recommend the death penalty for the sentence to be carried out. That's right, the verdict does not even need to be unanimous for him to be found guilty. Since Melly would be among the first to be subject to this rule, the jurors' site visit will undoubtedly be crucial in helping them make their conclusions regarding the truth. So let's take a moment to review what alarming Melly wasn't in the car with Bortland when he drove to the hospital with Sackchaser and Juvie. But phone data shows that the 4 men were together for about 15 minutes before that. That's not all though, because the prosecution has said that Melly called Fredo Bang to come get him. Felicia Holmes's testimony may have given Melly an advantage because it allowed his lawyers to ask for a mistrial. Even if he is found guilty, if he files an appeal, there's a chance that the Florida We also know that Melly met with Sackchaser a few months before his murder, and the rapper's conversation with his mother revealed that he requested a .40 caliber gun, exactly the same type used to murder both victims. When the prosecution first attempted to piece together a motive, they brought in investigator Danny Polo and attempted to make this a gang-related murder. But as I mentioned earlier, they don't have to let the rapper prove his innocence again. Assemble a motive, and the testimony of the medical examiners and Sergeant Williams presents a picture that is precisely consistent with what the forensic evidence had initially revealed back in February 2019. But in spite of all of those testimonies, the prosecution put together a really strong case. These elements have all been established in the courtroom over the past few weeks. But there are also events that happened outside of it. There are 2 important things that happen in the courtroom prior to the trial that may shed some light on a few things. First, I want to talk about what YNW Portland has been doing in the last few years. And second, a wrongful death case that may give the prosecution the impetus they have been looking for a long time. Melly got COVID-19 in April 2020 and requested to be placed under house arrest. The judge denied his request, but granted Bortland the same request. Portland has been essentially free while his co-defendant has been imprisoned. In January 2023, media reported that Bortland told police that he was only the driver in the case where he will stand trial. The following month, Bortland was charged with first-degree murder and 2 counts of accessory after the fact. In a statement issued by his lawyer, he said that although his client was placed under house arrest, Melly would remain behind bars, which is exactly what happened. There was only one man with one gun who shot Sackchaser and Juvie, as testimony has already shown, and who knows what else will come to light before October. This whole situation also creates a very interesting dynamic between Melly and Bortland, as October of this year gives the prosecution plenty of time to make a stronger case against Melly, which may also help Bortland in his defense. What happens if Melly's argument changes to place more blame on Portland, or if Bortland makes a deal that places Melly at fault? Men will even stage a drive-by shooting to cover up their crimes, and then all bets are off when it comes to fighting for their freedom. Melly has revealed that he may have become resentful of Bortland over the years, because his time in prison has been anything but comfortable. The rapper has also talked about the harsh conditions he has had to endure behind bars, including having his phone privileges taken away from him for minor infractions, but that is not all. The rapper, who has been kept completely hidden from the world, said, "I have been threatened by deputies, lieutenants and sergeants that say they will hide me from the world and threaten to beat my ass every day. And if I tell my lawyers, they will lie and say I hit them first." The rapper, in an Instagram post describing the numerous difficulties he has been facing, expressed genuine fear for his life. From the surface at least, it seems like Melly should have every reason to be upset about how much easier the last few years have been for Bortland. The second topic I want to talk about is the wrongful death lawsuit that Sackchasers and Juvie's families brought against Portland and Nelly in October 2020. It will be interesting to see how their trials play out. The next step is for them to beat one half to death, just like they do to other inmates here at the main jail in Broward County almost daily. One of the attorneys who filed the lawsuit wrote that when there are fewer people dividing up the potential money, the people who will receive it will receive more. Juvie's father also supported this claim, stating that the 4 men had a substantial amount of money coming in, but couldn't agree on how it would be divided. The dispute was about their plans to sell the YNW brand for sales and licensing purposes. Sackchaser and Sackchaser were expected to receive $200,000 apiece, while Juvie would have received $100,000 from the $500,000 contract. Juvie's father could not reasonably suspect Melly's involvement in his son's death.
Day one, I believe that Melly was responsible for my son's death on October 26th when I first heard the story, because his explanation, when I finally talked to him in Cortland on a FaceTime, their response and how they was reacting, they showed no remorse. They didn't act like they was grieving, like they lost a best friend or nothing. They was, in my opinion, they was in the best spirits. They never came to town, never came to my son's funeral.
Since the prosecution is still attempting to piece together the approximately 1 hour that passed between the 4 men leaving the recording studio and Bortland arriving at the hospital in October 2018, expert testimony and other evidence have suggested that Melly may be a "we got the same brain" and "I and all my had the same dream growing up." But somewhere along the line, did Melly decide his dream was more important than theirs? And if he did, was it enough for him to kill them? A documentary about Melly delved into his relationship with both men, describing Juvie as his day one. Melly lost 2 of his closest friends over a money dispute a few months after Sackchaser and Juvie died. More startling information regarding YNW Melly will probably come to light during the trial, but as of right now, it's uncertain how the evidence will turn out. Surveillance, confessions, and gang affiliations.
In the case of a double murder in Miramar.
2 people now behind bars, including a South Florida rapper who actually sings a popular song about murder.
Miramar police stated on February 13th, the day he turned himself in, that Cortland Henry and Jamal Demons, also known as YNW Melly, had been taken into custody and charged with 2 charges of first-degree murder. On October 26, 2018, Christopher Thomas Jr. and Anthony Williams were slain. It was the first time Melly had to wait for his trial. The inquiry, backed by forensic evidence, found that Demons shot and murdered Williams and Thomas Jr., and that Demons and Henry arranged the crime scene to look like a drive-by shooting. Despite the fact that rappers sometimes self-snitch, Melly's Instagram account was one of the most incriminating pieces of evidence. And as the case draws to a close, The prosecution has revealed a number of shocking details that paint Melly in a negative light and make him appear guilty. During the prosecution's opening statements, it was revealed that they had an incriminating Instagram text that Melly had sent to fellow rapper Peasy Gambino, suggesting that Melly may have recently taken his own life with a single indirect message. Melly was incarcerated for more than 4 years.
One individual, and specifically, sends out, and I want to quote the message exactly that you will hear. Yo, homie, you good?
Since the rapper may have snitched on himself and confessed to the murder, Melly's scary answer could play a significant role in the case's outcome. The prosecutor stated that the rapper's response to the direct message was, "I did that."
Mr. Demmons responds very succinctly, "I did that."
Did this really prove that Melly killed his 2 best friends with whom he had grown up? The prosecution must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the rapper confessed to the murders in the Instagram text because Melly faces the death penalty. The first problem is the context in which the text message was sent. It could have been about anything, but the prosecution refuted this theory by stating that the only context the message could have been sent about was the earlier shooting, because Melly had been bombarded with messages that morning, all of which had the same theme: their inquiries about the tragic incident.
Context around the messages matters. So in the context of this message, this individual is reaching out, asking if Mr. Demmons is good, after he's been tagged in multiple social media posts about this drive-through. This shoot.
Interview 11/10/11/27. The rapper's defense, however, pointed out that one detail in the text might have saved Melly's life. It turns out that the autocorrect feature might be his saving grace, because the word spelling was inconsistent with what the rapper used in other texts. The defense had a well-written response to the text, but the prosecutor said that since everyone in Melly's direct messages was asking him about the alleged drive-by, that would have been the only thing he was responding to.
Tell the jury how he spells that.
Interview 11:50/11:56. According to Melly's defense attorney, all of the prosecution's text messages submitted during the trial showed that Melly spelled the word that as D-A-T.
When Melly spells the word that, you want me to go through all 19 pages? That every time, he does not spell it T-H-A-T, but D-A-T.
In an effort to resolve this issue, new information was released, and the prosecution proved that the phone in question was Melly's. It seems that detectives found images of a Western Union receipt that contained Melly's name and phone number, providing a link between the 2 variables.
Read the print down at the bottom of this Western Union.
It says Jamel Demons, 604 9th Avenue, Vero Beach, Florida, 32962, USA, and phone number 772-713-9807.
However, Adrian Davis, a friend of Melly's who was with the group at the studio, entered the stand and made a shocking admission. Melly couldn't find his phone, but they all rushed to their phones in the morning after hearing that their pals had been shot and died.
Did anyone get on their phone?
Yeah.
Did anyone have any problem locating their phone?
Yes.
Who was that?
Jamel.
This led to issues. Davis revealed on the stand that a number of people regularly used Melly's phone. In fact, the entire crew periodically used each other's phones. But where was Melly's phone during the entire period? And if he didn't have it when the incriminating text was sent, then who did?
We all use this phone sometimes. We all use each other's phones.
Police used the phones from the 2 cars they took out of the studio to track the whereabouts of Melly and his team throughout the morning, while the phones in the grey Jeep indicated that Mitsubishi was headed to Sunset Lakes. The prosecution seemed to answer the question, saying that detectives had used cell phone data to track Melly's phone's location that morning, and that they were able to prove the rapper was in possession of his phone as he left the studio. Melly was seen leaving the building with his phone in hand, veered off course to show that the cell phone data was accurately leading detectives to the Jeep's location that morning, and that Melly's and Sackchaser's phones were identical in terms of make and model, and that they had the same cell phone plan, meaning that they were using the same service and cell towers. The prosecution tried to show during the trial that if the data was accurate, the two phones' paths should be similar. By comparing the data from the two cell phones and tracking the movements of the vehicle, detectives found that the Jeep traveled up to Pines Boulevard before heading west. The prosecution revealed a shocking fact. As the Jeep continued south and turned onto Pembroke Road, a desolate area close to the Everglades border, which was perfect for carrying out the killings because Pembroke Road ends at a waste facility. There are no nearby residential homes. There are no cameras that would have allowed the police to visually locate the vehicle. There are no streetlights or people passing by. And the four rappers were alone that night because there were no other cell phones at Pembroke Road that
The
morning.
state intends to show the evidence that the phone was there at the murder scene, and there were no other phones there. There is no one else out there at 4 in the morning.
Later, the prosecution revealed even more damning evidence. Melly made a FaceTime call to his then-girlfriend, Mariah Hamilton. This was also confirmed by Mariah's mother, who was also in the house when the call came in. This is because Mariah screamed, waking up her mother, who went to check what was going on. After getting off the FaceTime call, the rapper then sent a pin location at 4:42 a.m. to Frederick Givens, popularly known as Fredo Bang, a rapper from Louisiana. So who is telling the truth? Did Melly's friend lie under oath, or was the data collected from the cell phone towers inaccurate? Adrian Davis had a lot more to say while on the stand regarding that morning when they left the studio. According to his testimony, Melly was with them at the house. Surveillance footage clearly showed Melly getting into the gray Jeep. On the other hand, Davis left in the red Mitsubishi. So if the Jeep took a detour and went all the way to Pembroke Road while the Mitsubishi went to Sunset Lakes, how did Melly find himself at his house in Sunset Lakes together with the occupants in the red Mitsubishi? Well, according to Davis, along the way, their vehicle stopped and Melly hopped in.
Did there come a time that you were woken up before you got to the house?
Yes.
What happened?
We pulled over, and that's when Melly got in the car with us.
Even more damning evidence was later discovered by the prosecution. Melly called his then-girlfriend Mariah Hamilton on FaceTime, and Mariah's mother, who was also at home when the call came in, confirmed that Mariah screamed, waking her mother, who went to see what was happening. The rapper then ended the FaceTime call and sent a pin location to Frederick Given, also known as Fredo Bang, a rapper from Louisiana. So, who is telling the truth? Did Melly's friend lie under oath, or was the information obtained from the witness on the stand? Davis talked extensively about how, according to his testimony, Melly was with them when they left the studio that morning. Security footage showed Melly getting into the grey Jeep, but Davis drove off in the red Mitsubishi. If the Jeep took a detour and drove all the way to Pembroke Road while the Mitsubishi drove to Sunset Lakes, how did Melly end up at his Sunset Lakes home with the people in the red Mitsubishi?
There come a time that you were woken up before you got to the house?
Yes.
What happened?
We pulled over, and that's when Melly got in the car with us.
YNW Juvie's producer, Trayvon Glass, was the only crew member to testify that day, and Davis says he was asleep and could not remember where they stopped, but he was positive that Melly had an alibi. Davis says, Melly was with them when the news of their friend's shooting and deaths arrived. At first, the defense had a Trayvon's testimony about what transpired when they arrived at Melly's house in the red Jeep may have totally destroyed Melly's alibi, but there was a problem with his taking the stand. He claimed to have been using marijuana heavily and to have been evading the police for the previous 4 years. Trayvon was currently out on bail and seemed to have been forced to be there.
When you got to the house gate at Melly's house, who was inside your vehicle, the red Mitsubishi?
Same people who seen it in the car.
Trayvon claims that Melly was not with them at the house or when news reports of the alleged drive-by shooting arrived, and 2 witnesses in the red Mitsubishi gave contradictory testimony while on the stand. So who was lying under oath? The defense may have been able to raise doubts and influence the jury's verdict, even though it seemed like Melly had just snitched on himself in an Instagram text. Along with the cell phone data recovered from the crime scene, we will also note that many other people connected to the case may have used social media to confirm that Melly may have been involved in the murders, or at least the legal battle, detention defense, and what comes next, Jamal. By YNW, Morris Demons Raised by His mother, YNW Melly, is no stranger to criminal behavior. As a child, he joined the Bloods gang. Melly didn't appear to have a father figure during his early years. This, combined with his connection to the Bloods, meant that he would soon be involved in criminal activity. The rapper was sentenced to several months in prison before being released on probation. But the following year he was arrested for violating his probation and was held until March 2018. At the age of 16, he was arrested for shooting at a group of students near Vero Beach High School and was found guilty of 2 counts of aggravated assault and aggravated battery for discharging a firearm in public. After bonding out, he was released. But 2 months later, the talented rapper was arrested again in Fort Myers for possession of marijuana, drug paraphernalia, weapons, and ammunition. He was arrested again for marijuana possession in January 2019, and the following month, YNW Melly was arrested on charges that would affect his life for the next 4
2 men are in jail this morning, including an up-and-coming Florida rapper. Both men are charged in a double murder. Police are saying the 2 staged a crime scene to make it look like a drive-by shooting.
On February 12, 2019, Melly was arrested after it was revealed that he had been connected to the murders of 2 of his friends, Anthony Williams, also known as YNW Sackchaser, and Christopher Thomas, also known as YNW Juvie. The murders happened on October 23, 2018, and the police initially believed it was a drive-by shooting because one of the victims' friends, NW Portland, had driven them to the hospital in a Jeep Compass. However, after months of investigation, they came to the conclusion that Demon was responsible for his friend's death, and Portland had helped him cover it up. Cortland Henry and Jamal Demons, also known as YW Melly, have been taken into custody and charged with 2 first-degree murder charges. The police statement said that the investigation, which was supported by forensic evidence, found that Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr. were killed on October 26, 2018, and that Demons and Henry staged the crime scene to make it appear as though it was a drive-by shooting. The rapper promptly informed his fans on Instagram about the situation. "To all of my fans and supporters, no, I did not get locked up in Washington, but I am turning myself in today," he stated, recanting all of the charges against him and Northeast Portland. "I want you to know how much I value and adore each and every one of you. The system is seeking justice after I lost both of my brothers to violence a few months ago. Sadly, there are a lot of falsehoods and rumors going about, but don't worry. God is with my brother YNW Portland and myself, and we want everyone to keep in mind that we are a new family." Melly said, "I love you all," in the Instagram post that has since been removed. Sackchaser YNW and Juvie Frias, YNW prosecutors say they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Melly killed his 2 friends, saying the murder was particularly heinous, cruel, or atrocious, and that Melly committed homicide in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner. Notably, Florida is one of 30 states that allow the death penalty, according to police statements. As YNW Portland and the 2 victims were wrapping up a late-night studio session, a car pulled up on his driver's side and began shooting, he told police. The police said they had forensic evidence that demonstrated Demon pulled the trigger after, determining that neither victim was shot from the outside but rather from inside the car, refuting the drive-by account. And they verified that the right side of the car, where Sackchaser and Juvie had sat that night, had 8 bullet holes in it. He then pulled off the freeway and drove to an emergency room early in the morning to get help for his 2 friends in his car, who said they had been shot in a drive-by. A shell casing inside the car and 8 similar shell casings in another location where they believe Melly and Portland shot the car to make it look like a drive-by. And they said they believe the first shot was fired from inside the car on the left rear passenger side. First, using CCTV footage that showed the group leaving the studio that evening, investigators were able to determine that Melly had been sitting on the left rear passenger side of the car. Second, the autopsy evidence showed that the wound paths to the victims' heads ran from left to right, which directly contradicted the initial reports, faked by Portland, and denies the allegations of a drive-by shooting on the right side of the vehicle. Police also said that Melly and Portland drove around with the bodies of the 2 victims for some time, after they were shot before going to the hospital. It's interesting to note that Bortland later told police that Nelly was in the same car as them, but eventually got into another car so that the police could prove Demon killed his friends for money. After his arrest, his lawyers jumped to his defense, stating, "We disagree with the assertions made in the notice and eagerly await the charges to be dropped." In addition, Melly's lawyers proclaimed his innocence, claiming that no murder, weapon, no witnesses, no DNA evidence, and no motive had been found. Thousands of internet users awkwardly linked Melly's arrest to the rapper's 2017 hit song, "Murder on My Mind," which was released 18 months prior to the murders of Sack Chaser and Juvie, combining brutal and vivid murder fantasies with punishment for loneliness. Shooting incident near his high school in Vero Beach, Florida. The rapper was arrested for misdemeanors, but his attorneys think that if using the song seemed to work when he was up for a few misdemeanors, then it would definitely work now that he's on trial for double homicide. The defense anticipates that the prosecution will attempt to use the same song and lyrics in the same way for the above charges. The rapper was arrested again for violating his probation shortly after his release in 2017, saying that even though prosecutors had him on a few minor infractions, his return to jail was dependent on the state attorney's actions. The rapper's lawyers told the court that if he had wanted to escape, he would have done so after learning of the other person who had been arrested at the venue in the District of Columbia. He also asked that the song not be used in the trial and tried to have Melly released on bond, arguing that he had no plans to flee and that all of his friends and family lived in Florida, proving that he did not pose a flight risk because he knew the charges against him and still chose to turn himself in. The rapper's troubles did not stop there, as a few weeks after being arrested on the double murder charge, he was also named as a suspect in the shooting death of Deputy Gary Chambler. A witness claimed that Demon and Bortland were standing with a group of suspects. It seems that after the police issued the arrest warrant, they ended up arresting someone who was mistakenly identified as Melly. His lawyers argued that if the client was going to take advantage of the possibility of leaving the state, he would have done so by now. However, their efforts were in vain, as the court denied Melly bond, and he was imprisoned for 4 years pending trial. After the guys hurled a bottle at the group, the resident of a car allegedly shot a pistol at them, and 170 yards distant, one of the rappers allegedly returned fire, striking Chambler with an errant bullet and